Those that don't know me, I'm Jim Zott. I'm the director for the project management program here. If anybody's interested in getting an MBA or an MS with an emphasis in project management, there's still time to apply for this fall, although you're quickly running out of time. And if you need a graduate to talk to about the program, she's right here. I'd like to welcome Peter Burns tonight. Peter's a good friend of the program. He sets up site visits for us all the time at Alcatel when our visiting class from Germany comes in. And we appreciate that. And if you haven't seen his bio on the info sheet that went out, I found it really interesting. I don't know where he gets his energy from. I'm really jealous. Maybe it started with his background in the Army Signal Corps. That sounds like sitting behind radios or something. Is that what you did there, Peter?
Electrons.
Yeah, messing with electrons as opposed to being out in the field and getting good exercise. But he's a business development manager for Alcatel-Lucent, and he's also a distinguished Toastmaster, Toastmasters International, so I know we're going to have a dynamic presentation tonight. And on the energy side of things, just listen to this list of stuff. He's affiliated with Junior Achievement, United Way, Chairman of Leadership, Frisco Advisory Committee, Board Member of the Frisco Education Foundation, Chairman of the Mindbender Academy, a science, technology, engineering, and math camp that encourages students to consider STEM as a profession, and his interest include traveling, golfing, working with youth, and spending time with family and friends. So Peter, I'm very jealous. I haven't played golf in decades, and someday I'm going to learn how to play again. So without further ado, here's Peter Burns.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. I was being pressured by some friends of mine that says, hey, I'm late. And the only thing I missed was the pizza. But I figured I'll be able to get some later on, hopefully. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate you coming out this evening for us to kind of talk about communicating across multiple generations. I figured out that we probably have some miscommunication when you talk to various generations just from a basic conversation I had with my niece. And basically what it was is I sent her daughter a gift, and she sent me a text message to say, thank you, right? But in so many words, thank you. I got that out of it. And so basically I sent her a response by saying, hey, you should pick up the phone every now and then and give me a call from time to time. And she sent a text back by saying, LMNO, something after that. I just got lost after that acronym. Okay, and so I started to Google it to see what it was, and what came up, was I said, well, she's not that smart, right? So it's not a, you know how it is when you're at work, right? And you're sitting down and you're talking over whatever it is that you're doing with your job, and someone throw an acronym out there that you're not familiar with, you just go online and Google it, right? Well, that's what I did, and everything that came back said, no, she's not that smart. So I sent her a text back that said, what is LMNO or whatever that was? And she sent a text back and says, OMG, you don't know how to talk young. I said, okay. I knew what OMG was, but what did you mean I don't know how to talk young? And I started thinking about some of the projects that we work on, especially the projects I work on, where you have people from so many different backgrounds, cultures, time zone differences, but there's also one thing that we are starting to see more and more, especially in the business that I'm in, is that you start to communicate with people across multiple generations. And each time you open your mouth and say something to one of them, there are some distinct differences in terms of how they understand what it is that you're going to say to them, what is it you said to them. And so I started thinking about that, started reading about it, started researching, started looking into it, and I realized that, hey, you know what, that there is a challenge. And I'm not sure if any of you have been exposed to that or had any experience with that in the past, where you had miscommunications on your project because one person recognized it one way, you said one thing and they thought this and, something else, right? I mean, how many of you have had that experience? I'm sure we all have. Great. I'm so happy you raised your hands because I'm going to do an exercise later on that's going to hopefully challenge you with some of those thoughts. So I see some smiling faces out there, folks that I recognize, so I appreciate you coming out. So here's what I'm looking at as an agenda for today. I want to try to see if we can identify some of those things, some of those challenges that we all recognize as project leaders. Let's see if we can identify some things that we can do differently, or some things, some barriers that we can overcome. Let's see if we could figure out a way collectively to come up with some new techniques, or maybe it's just some different things a little bit differently, or from an awareness perspective, where we can probably gain the trust that we want from our team members. And then hopefully we can, as a group, kind of share some of the things, some of our own experiences, and see if we can come up with some tools or some tips that we can walk away from. And as I said before, I'm going to have some group exercises for us to kind of review. Now, project teams are exactly the same, no matter where they are, no matter what industry you're in. I'm in the technology industry, and my project team is exactly the same as yours. Now, the profile might be somewhat different, but the characteristics of that team is exactly the same. Whether you're in the as a fire team, or if you're just doing a business team, no matter what it is, the teams are exactly the same. For example, just before I left here, I was on a call with a team, with my project team on a particular solution we're working on. The developers are in Spain. The trainers for the solution are in Russia. The manufacturing is in China. The person that's actually putting together the proposal or the pre-sale stuff for us, the solution architect, they're in Poland. And we're actually delivering a solution here in the United States. And I also found that Oracle in the US is different from Oracle in Europe. Right? Even though they look the same, they're spelled the same way, it's different, right? You figure that if you order, who's here from Oracle? I don't want to talk bad about Oracle. I'm just using that as an example, right? So I'm not talking bad about them, just using that example. But we realize that, the teams are identical, no matter where you are. It's just the characteristics, just the way we actually perform. So as a result of that, we can look at it and see that teams are a collection of experts that come together to try to get something done together. That's primarily what it is. And as a leader, we have to recognize, how do we take and get the best out of that team? What is it that we do to motivate that team to be able to accomplish that goal? So here's the exercise that we're going to do here. Let me see, I'd like to see if I can come up with a couple teams here. That looked like a team in the back. There's a team over here. There's another. Yeah, that's good. We've got 5 teams or 4 teams. All right, that's good. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little team exercise. All right. But let me tell you up front, it's designed to kind of trip you up a little bit, to create some fallacies, to create some frustration, and so on and so forth. And hopefully from that, we'll be able to take whatever activities happen as a result of that to kind of help us with our class as we go forward. Fair? So that'll be a team up there, one team there, a team here, and a team here. Let me go ahead and get you guys all of everything that you would need to start getting yourself frustrated a little bit. Okay? So these pieces that I'm going to pass out, what I don't want you to do is turn them over. And I'm going to put it in front of someone that's going to be the project team leader. All right? All right. All right. Interesting, right? Project team leaders. Now, I'm purposely selecting people. Oops, excuse me. You look so serious, sir. I'm going to have you the project team leader, okay? All right, good. So what I've done, each of you that I've placed those pieces in front of, you're a project team leader. Now, I am going to need 2 people from those teams. So you 2 will be my extras. You 2 will be my extras. Jim, I won't bother you. Huh? You 2 will be my extras. So how many is there? 3 extras so far? And sir, you 2 gentlemen will be my extras, all right? And you'll see why in a minute. Again, it's to create some confusion. That's what I'm doing, creating confusion. So, so now, extras, please stand, just come forward. You just kind of remember, just come forward here a little bit. You didn't know that you were going to have to do all this today, but that's okay. All right. Yeah, 1, 2, did I give it 2? Oh, you 2 guys are together. 4. Did I pick out more than teams? So there's 2 teams, just 2 teams, 3. Okay, here we go. Okay, sorry. 4. So I have 4 teams, right? All right, so now here's what I'm going to do, just so everybody understand. I'm going to give these guys some specific instructions for you guys to perform, all right? So this was one team here, all right? And I think we selected a project leader. Who is the project leader? Right there, project leader. So the rest of you are just going to be team members, all right? Whether you be person A, team member B, team member C, the instruction will tell you that, okay? That's the same for everyone else. And then these two that are on each one of the teams that I assigned them to are going to be observers. And so they're going to observe what it is that you're doing, all right? You will have 15 minutes basically to put a puzzle together. But here's the problem. You're only going to have limited communications. Your instructions in terms of how you can communicate with each other are going to be in the document that you receive. So what you'll have is a few minutes to basically select, look at, I say he's already starting to look. I think that's going to be the winning team right here. Right? So that's a winning team over there, right? All right, so the pieces that I place in front of you are in front of you purposely, hopefully face down. And what each member is going to do is select a piece and turn it over. Then the project leader will determine where that piece goes on the board. All right, putting that puzzle together. Unfortunately, the project leader is going to be limited on how they can communicate with each other. All right, are we okay with that? All right, let the chaos begin. All right, so you know what team you are. Oh, wait a minute. Let me tell you guys all at once. I don't want you guys giving away the answers either, right? Basically, I've given you sheets for every member. You just go through. The project person will get the first two sheets on your paper. All right, project leader, right? Which he'll get the puzzle, the answers to the puzzle, and he'll get his instructions. And then you give the next four person B, C, D, and E a sheet, and that person will simply be if there are more people in the team, then the sheet's just fine. All right, and then observer and messenger. One of you will be an observer, and the other one will be the messenger. And the instructions are on there in terms of what you do as an observer versus a messenger. Now, as a messenger, some of them can communicate with each other using a piece of paper, right, and write that paper, whatever they want to write on it, and send it over to each other, right. If you're the messenger and they don't put a to and a from on there, then you just take that paper, right? It's like email, right? It didn't go. So I sent you an email and it didn't happen. So we're just trying to create some confusion. All right? Are we ready?
This is for 5 people, right?
Yes. So
Okay,
what you do,
What about the other people?
they will. That's it. If there are more than what's on the team, just leave them there. No. I just want you guys to be confused right now. All right?
So if there are 6 people,
Yeah, you just give the first 5. That's all.
okay, and the other person that
They just observe. They just observe.
observe.
Right. They just stay in there and sit.
Observe, but not
Yeah. So remember,
observe.
right.
One of us
They just stay in the team. Yeah. Just like most project team, right? You get one guy that don't do any work. All right. So remember, the project leader gets these 2 sheets. Remember, the project leader gets these 2 sheets. Okay. You got to remember that. Okay. Good.
Okay.
We're good. All right.
Okay, so which group are we?
Oh, you're at the very top.
At the top?
Yeah.
At the top?
Oh no, right here. You right there. That's right. You're right there.
Right
Yeah.
there, on
Yeah.
that side.
And I put you guys. You're up top. You observing the ones on the top. Yes.
Okay. Do you have an extra pen? I can borrow. Need a
Another one have a pen? I'll tell you what, let you borrow my pen, but you're going to bring mine back, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. Okay, so here's the confusion just started, right? I gave the observers, or my 2 extra people, some instructions to give you. So they're going to give the project leader his instruction as well as the key to the puzzle. The project leader is responsible for making sure he doesn't share the key with anyone else. All right? The instructions in terms of what to do next is in the instructions that are being given to you. So all I'm going to do is just watch.
Instructions that I got,
Yeah, you have instructions and they all will get instructions too.
they all get different instructions.
Right. Now, the pieces that I put in front of the project leader, go ahead and take the paper clips off those. Keep those face down. You got it? I know it is, right? All right, so once you've gotten your sheets of paper in front of you, please let me know if you have any questions. Good?
Somebody gonna go over the instructions?
Okay, I'll do that again. just to see what other teams have. All right, so basically what you have to do is figure out who person B is.
Okay, I'm
Just all you have to do is just look around the room and say, who's person B?
I have
You A? Okay, you're B. Okay. So B will, and then he's C, and then D, where's person E? And E. Okay, good. So basically, you guys are gonna have to come down a little closer, unfortunately.
Okay, so this is.
That's your team.
A, B, C, D, and E.
All right, there you go.
Okay.
And basically, person A is going to pick up a piece and flip it over,
Yeah.
and then you're going to give him instructions based on your instructions.
But he is A,
That's right.
okay?
Got it. All right. Any other questions before we get started? Because I'm going to start the time. I know it's a little confusing, but
So
believe
should
me,
I
it's
get
going to
over here in
work.
front of
You
them?
sure can. You sure can. All right. So project leaders, you recognize who each one of your team leaders are. They're person A, B, C, and D, and E. Project leaders are person A. Team members are B, C, D, and E. Are we with that? So project leaders, are you ready? Got it? All right. Okay, are we all set? Okay, got it? Aha. All right, so can I have your attention real quick, please? All right, so now, what I just showed you is exactly what happens when you go into a project team for the first time. Is that correct? It's the same thing. I can tell you it happens every single time because most of the time, when you finish one project, you're concerned about going on the next project before you do a close down, right? It happens. And so when you get to your next team, there's always confusion. And that's basically what I've just created, just to show you that. And so as a project leader, it's important that you quickly get your troops together. Now, some of your teams may be right there in the same room with you, and some of them may be virtual. So the question is, as project leaders, what do you do? All right, so that's the first step. So here is the instructions. You've already been identified based on whether you're person A, which person A is the project leader, and then person B, C, D, and E are team members on the team. And then I've put 2 observers within each one of the team. One of them will act as your email system, and the other one will act as an observer. Now, if you do not put a to and from on your sheet of paper when you communicate back and forth, I've already instructed them to lose it. Just like any email system, you lose something, right? Right? Good. So here's what happens. All the pieces should be face down. Person B will select a piece and turn it over. The project leader will look at that piece and make a decision on whether that piece goes on into the place or sits on the side. Okay? Again, it's a puzzle. All you're doing is putting it together. Now, person A, the project leader, has specific instructions on how he or she can communicate with the group. Some of the communication is only going to be either by paper or by facial expression. A smile, head nod, what have you, right? Those are all the cultural challenges that we have to deal with. Those are all the communication barriers that we have to deal with and so forth, right? So, are we ready?
I wait, just one question. So all these pieces have to go in numerical order into the puzzle?
Sounds like a plan to me. All right? All right, any questions? I'm going to start the clock. Time begins.
Messenger. Thank you.
But you're kind of showing them the results. You got to kind of hide your key. There you go.
She says.
Are you all done? Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, I see.
No, Debbie, oh, sorry, no, I'm not.
Okay.
Just a graduate of the program.
Okay, team, project team, your time is up. All right. Okay, let's talk about what just happened. Let's talk about just what just happened. First, before I ask the observers to share with me their thoughts, why don't you kind of tell me what happened? I mean, obviously there was confusion. That was part of the game. So, what happened? Yes, sir.
Well, we couldn't hear what we're supposed to do. Our leader wasn't telling us what to do.
Okay.
And then there was some conversation with one person, but the rest of them were sort of left out.
Okay. All right, good. That can cause some problem on a project team, doesn't it? Okay. Yes. Okay, that happens too sometimes, right? You know, I mean, think about it. How many of you have been selected to be a project leader to something that you absolutely had no idea about, or the only qualification you had was that you passed the mirror test, right? You know, they hold the mirror up in front of you, and you were breathing, and you're it, right? We've had those. Someone else had their hands up.
We had confusion at first because we didn't know what each person was doing, and at the start of a project, you should always introduce yourselves and what your role is going to be.
Good. All right, good. Now we're getting somewhere. Anyone else?
My team had a lot of spatial concepts, so we were able to get the few pieces, put the puzzle together.
Oh, so your team. Oh, okay, great. Outstanding. Team up there. Any comments?
At the end, the obvious question hit me in the face, which was, do you have the key?
Ah,
Right.
but
Yeah.
you did. Okay.
And would you share it with us? Yeah.
Okay. What was his answer?
No, when we, at the end, we figured out that he had the key, and that was like, it was the obvious question.
Okay.
Another issue was he was able to send me notes, but he wasn't able to send her, and she was like, why are you answering my notes?
Right. Right. Absolutely. That happens, right? Yes, sir.
Abusive IT person, I sent my puzzle piece back.
Oh, you did? You sent it back. Hey, that happens too, right? All right. I will remember those. Anyone else? Your team? Any comments from your
My
team?
team wasn't getting facial expressions at all. I mean, I resorted everything for them, and it's like,
Yeah, I think they got that one. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's talk about observers. Observers, let's say here, observers. What did you guys observe?
well, I think quite honestly, at the beginning it was a slow start because everyone was unsure. Kind of to your point, it's like who's A, who's B, who's C. So folks were a little unsure about that, and so we had a bit of analysis paralysis. A couple of team members just disengaged early, which you see on projects. They were like, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what's going on, I'm not participating. So we had that going on, and a couple people just like were, I'm so confused. That was going on. The written communication flowed very well. The email guy was humping. And we even had some people use electronic paper to pass their notes.
Oh,
So people
okay.
got very creative there. So I thought that was great. And I kind of noticed A, getting overloaded by email.
That's
It's like he's trying to think something, here comes the load, he's like, and then here comes the iPhone, he's like, can I get back to this one? So maybe that's why he wasn't replying, because he got a little overloaded at times, and then at the end, someone just took charge and turned all the puzzle pieces over and told A, put it together. Oh, yeah, okay.
I noticed that the project manager was putting it all together. I said, wow, that's a hardworking project manager, right?
We call it the 80-20 rule, though, which tends to happen sometimes.
That's true, right? Now think about it. How many projects have you been on where, you know, as a project manager, I mean, information was just coming at you left and right. You had no earthly idea where to go, right? Or vice versa. You were just constantly asking the question, what do I do? What do I do? What's next? What's next? Come on, feed me. Come on, feed me. And the project manager wouldn't respond because they're still trying to figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do in this role? So that happens too, okay?
I was saying that we have like a Capital One, you know, like this is a thing. I didn't get any communication or nothing came up. I was ready to leave.
And that's what happens to a lot of project team members too. They just leave.
I just wanted to leave. So.
You know, that happens.
No, it was disengaged.
Disengaged, okay. All right.
No, there was nothing to engage to. I didn't get anything. So
Hey, that happens, right? That can create a challenge to where you need to create trust on your team, or at least develop commitment on your teams. All right, let's start with the top observers for the top team. All right, over here. What did you guys observe?
Initially, massive confusion. Nobody seemed to know what's going on. There was a lot of questions back and forth. Eventually, we started sharing notes with the project manager, who was having a hard time keeping up with all the notes. So eventually, they started using more facial expressions than notes, because that seemed to be working quicker.
Okay.
Towards the end, when the pieces started coming together, some of the project team members sent questions to the project manager asking, can we just send you all the notes and all our puzzle pieces, then we can put it all together, and eventually that's how they came up. Within 2 seconds they were done.
Oh, yeah? So the project manager did it all.
No, he didn't do it, but they sent the notes.
Oh, okay.
They sent all the pieces together to him, and then they came together, all of them.
Oh,
And
okay.
started working on it.
Ah, okay.
I mean, from the minute they did that, they finished it within seconds.
Oh, good. All right. Another ingenious way. All right, observers for this team. Who was the observers for this team? The team. Oh, yeah. I think you like, okay, right. What did you observe?
Well, initially, we had trouble with our email system. And utilizing the email system, because we didn't have the to and the from or whatever, and so we had a little glitch with that. And then basically, there seemed to be communication between 2 people. The other 3 people had no idea what they were doing. The pieces went back and forth, and there was just a lot of confusion. And I wasn't even sure what I was seeing, how it was supposed to fall together, because I didn't know who was supposed to be doing what.
The other thing that was interesting about this team was it was very slow paced. Everyone was still very calm. So there was very calm communication. The first person that the team leader communicated with was the first she could communicate in email. And then we just all got caught up in that dynamic while they figured out the rules of communicating via email. And since no one else could communicate, but everyone was very patient and just waiting. There was none of that, like, you know, what about me? We were patient, waiting. She'll get to us eventually. Maybe it's a generational thing, patience. And then by the time it ended, neither of us knew what was going on. We just knew that others had finished and nobody here knew what to do.
Everybody was waiting for instructions.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. That seems to be the thing. All right, this team here, observers, what did you guys observe?
So the first thing I observed was, as with everyone else, there's a lot of confusion. A couple people didn't know, and intentionally I gave Lois C and E, or D and E, but I didn't put B, A, B, I didn't put B, C, and D together. And so the project, he figured it out, though, he eventually, and instead of waiting for them to choose it, he just slapped the puzzle in front of me. It's your turn, let's go.
Oh, okay.
In addition to facial expressions, the thing I love he added was grunt, and that seemed to work. But I have an all-male team, so I guess it's a language.
Oh, okay. Hey, all right. It's all right. That's all right.
Only use eye contact.
Oh, eye contacts. Okay. All right. So let me see. I think it was person C was able to communicate with the project leader, right? So how did that go?
Well, once we figured it out, he did all the work and we were done.
Oh, okay. All right.
On schedule and under pressure.
Oh, okay. Hey, that's all right. Okay. All right, good. Terrible quality. All right, anyone else? Any other person C? Yes, sir.
I didn't find any problems in communicating with his facial expression and hand language. I'm used to that.
Okay.
I'm good at communicating with somebody. One single email, that's all.
That was it. All right, that's good.
One email only.
All right, good. Now, I purposely put in instructions that all the other team members would be able to communicate with each other. So I restricted everyone except for C to allow you to be able to communicate with the project manager, right? That's what you have on some teams, right? The project manager has someone on the team that they can communicate with, right? That you feel comfortable talking to. And then the other team members feel left out somewhat. And that creates a problem too, doesn't it? All right? And so I was trying to create that dynamic by doing that with the team itself. Yes?
I can see that a little differently.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Yes, comment.
The person C was critical, the critical link to the overall success of the project.
Okay.
And had the wonderful project managers, program manager that we had here, looking at the organization chart, you want to call it that, we had to have some insight, some, what word I'm looking at, some intuition that someone on the team is going to be able to communicate. And since he was left with C, he defaulted to C, then I would have let C know what my constraints were. I guess you did you? Yeah. And then I would have had C should have been able to know who he could communicate with, because that's in your instruction. And if that message had been relayed, then I think we all would have had a different outcome or a more quicker solution, because then the peers would have been communicating amongst each other according to your instructions. But there were indeed constraints on the leader, and then limitations among the team, but there was a path forward. So there was a path to the solution through C.
Okay.
A different spin on what you were saying.
Absolutely. Did anyone else experience that or had that thought? You see, what you guys went through is what is called the various stages of team development, right? That's important. That's the one thing we miss sometimes as project leaders, right? We get a project, we get excited about it, we get told who our team members are, and we just get started. But we don't take the time to basically understand the dynamics of the team and understand how we're going to communicate, how we're going to get to that point of being able to perform to the level that we want to be able to perform. And Bruce Tuckman came up with these stages of team development. The foreman stage, where you guys all went through that, trying to figure out, okay, what are we doing? I'm confused. Who's in charge? Who do I talk to? You guys kind of went through that. Remember I told you that I was creating the confusion? That was the purpose of doing that. And then once you figured it out, then you started going through that process of working your way towards performing. I don't know if you did any adjourning. Hopefully you did. But the debrief that we just did, we'll assume that that's what that was. But that's basically what you did. And it's so important as a project leader that we remember that no matter what. I mean, that's just the one basic thing that we've got to just take a step back to be able to, get the dynamics of our team and be so that we can actually communicate. So it requires for us to develop what we call interpersonal skills to be able to communicate with our teams. And those interpersonal skills will help us to be able to communicate across multiple generations as well as cultures and so on and so forth. So PMBOK, believe it or not, has identified interpersonal skills that we all should be able to use as leaders. And this is what they are, basically, really, directly out of the PMBOK. Obviously, you don't see anything in there that says multiple generations, but that is a factor. But if we take a step back, no matter what the team is, again, remember, all teams are identical. All right, they're all competitive. They're all trying to get to a particular result. So as a project leader, there's some disciplines that we have to develop constantly in order for us to have the success that we're looking for. And so the idea is that we've got to make sure that we remember that we've got to take our team through that stage of success, and we've got to make sure that we understand what those interpersonal skills are so we can bridge the gap between our ability to lead the project team, to motivate the team to be able to communicate with that team. And that's the key of what we went through today. Just to kind of, just basically trip you up a little bit. I told you I would do that anyway. Just to trip you up a little bit, just to hopefully bring that point out front. And hopefully you've gotten that. Now, when we communicate across multiple generations, there's some things that we have to recognize about the generations that would help us to be able to do that. Now, traditional, I guess that's what we had over here, right? The hard workers, that kind of sit back, relax, take it easy, had great work ethic, they're just dedicated, just kept, working towards a solution. But it's important for us to recognize the various, what we call generations, and understand how they view the workforce, how they view the workplace itself. For example, I had a project manager one time that would, had to print everything out, had to print every single piece of paper out, right? No one is like that in this room, right? We're okay there. But they had to print every single piece of paper out. If you call them on the phone to talk to them about something in particular, they always say, okay, send me an email. I mean, think about it. How many times have you picked up the phone and someone said, well, I sent you an email on this? Well, guess what? I always tell people, if it was important, call me. Because if it's not important, I'll get to the email when I get a chance. See, a lot of people think that you sit at your desk and just wait, right? Here comes the email. Bam, here it is. Let's go deal with it, right? Right? And think about how many emails you get where you get copied on and you have absolutely no input to that or value to that email. They just add you to it because they said, well, you know what? Peter did this once before. Let's add him to it. And I go, well, why did you add me? And then next thing you know, you forward it to someone else. And, before you realize there's a whole chain of people that are responding back and forth to your email box. And then obviously you can't get to the one that's important to you. I've had those experiences. And I'm certain you've had those too. I spoke to a professor a couple months ago. She walked into her classroom and looked at her audience. And majority of the students, some of them were on their computers, some of them had their earphones in their ears. And at one point, she wanted to tell everyone, turn your computers off. Turn off your computer, pull out your earplugs and all that. And then she had to realize that, hey, everyone listen and interact differently. And it's important that we have to take that step back to recognize that. Right? Everyone do things different. I have an engineer that I work with. His name is Rodney Hom. And if you want to work with them on any particular solutions, you will be frustrated because his mind is thinking a couple centimeters or blocks or whatever it is away from you at that point. In other words, he may say, push this button, and he's actually on the results of that button once you push it. You've met those folks, right? I mean, they're doing multiple things. Their brain is doing just, But the guy I thought was the smartest person I ever worked with. But what I used to enjoy is when we go into staff meetings, he would sit in the room while we're going through a staff meeting, and he's on his computer. He's doing all kinds of maybe coding or whatever it is that he's doing. And then he would stop and say, hey, wait a minute, no, I think that's incorrect because 2 slides earlier you said this. Literally, that was the type of person he was. He listened. I mean, he paid attention differently. And it was perfect for me because I was in the military and I was coming out of the military at the time, and that was an assignment. I was working with all the civilians, and it was just a good training exercise for me to be able to come down, because in the military you give an order, you expect someone to do it right away, to be able to position myself in a way to be able to leave and work with in a commercial industry or commercial environment like I am now. And that was a great training lesson for me to remember, take a step back. Everyone doesn't do it the way I do it. And it's the same that goes when you're looking at people from multiple generations, okay? Now, before I go to that slide, in your organization, when you have a problem, what do? You try to solve it, right? You either try to have a workshop or do something to try to solve it, right? If you're the leader, you notice that there's a systemic problem, you basically get everybody to guess, look, we've got this problem, you don't know how to fill out your timesheet, we need to have a workshop to figure out a timesheet, right? And every organization does that. I found this thing, this cartoon, it talked about workshops. Basically, what it says is that, if you try to have a meeting to try to solve every single problem all the time, your employees are basically just going to leave, right? You just simply have to be able to stimulate them based on where they are in order to get the best results that you want. So the question is, how do we motivate and establish trust with our employees, with our project team? How do we do that? It's important that we recognize that those various generations have different attitudes. What would happen to this team that was just laid back, relaxed, they were on siesta time and all that, right? If someone had came in and disrupted that, they wouldn't respond, would they? Right? I mean, you guys would have probably looked at each other and just go, well, wait a minute, ooh, that's not how we do it here. All right? We take our breaks. It reminds me of a story, and I had a project in the Caribbean, and the guys over there, very hard-working guys, they just kind of take it easy. At a certain time of day, if things doesn't happen, they're going off and relax. Whereas we still have the mentality here in the U.S., if there's still 30 minutes left in the day, we want to still do that. And if it's just 30 minutes over our time to go, we'll still stay around and work, right? Where these guys go, wait a minute, mañana, we'll just do that tomorrow, right? And we have the attitude of pushing. And guess what happened? We kept pushing those guys, and eventually those guys just shut down. And then once we got a chance to sit down with them and realize how they operate from a culture perspective, then we started to have good success on our project team. So it's important that we recognize that, right? And I put this in here, communication skills to one generation is totally different in meaning from one generation to the other, all right? If you say to, let's say this audience here, hey, we needed to improve our communication skills. Well, we may all think of, going to Toastmasters or, start working on how we write. But when you talk to someone that's younger, like, tweeners or Generation X and Ys or what have you, they may think of it as how they communicate via email or via instant messaging, right? I just thought that was pretty straightforward for us to do that, see that. And of course, we as traditionalists and boomers, we respond very positively to praise, whereas the Xers and the millenniums will question you as to what took you so long to come and tell them how well they were doing, all right? And so it's important that we understand that. All right, good. So here's some things that we can do differently. If you're going to communicate with a generation, let's say we want to get them to commit to something. If you spoke to a traditionalist, you basically stroke them a little bit differently, right? Tell them how good they are. You let them know their experience levels are needed, right? For boomers, you want to let them know that you value what they bring to the table. And so you figure that their value is going to help. And then if you were talking to Xers, then obviously you want to tell them that, hey, you know what? You can go do this. You can do whatever you want to do, just get the job done, right? They don't really care too much about the rules. And if you were talking to millenniums, you want to let them know that they're going to be talking to or working with other great creative people that they can do those particular jobs with. So it's just a different approach that we have to look at when we're trying to figure out ways to gain trust from our team members. So now, here's what I'd like to do. Before we finish up here, just go around the room. Think about your own experiences in your own project team. You saw what we did earlier, right? And get into the foreman stage and then trying to get the team into the Norman stage. In your project world today, and basically the way you're doing your business, what are some of the challenges that you've faced, in communicating across your various generation or various folks within your team? And what did you do to solve those? Can we just kind of share some of those in the classroom? Who would like to start? Yes, sir.
The last 10 years that I was project manager, I just retired a few months ago. And what I'm seeing, what you put up there, and I'm fully in agreement with it, what communications is concerned, when you are dealing with government contracts, there's a connotation to it that was in my situation as a project manager, very critical, because all the documentation, I mean, an auditor from the DCAA, the Defense Contracting Auditing Agency, was sent down to audit the project. He could at any time walk up to my desk and say, I want all of that stuff about that project from to. That means all email, all the communication. That was one thing. The second one was that when it came to proving in negotiations that that was a change order that was requiring to substantiate it, so the DCAA would audit it and say, yep, that is right or wrong. You have to substantiate that with email documentation. And one of the things that I found out was really very difficult sometimes to communicate was, guys, when you're expressing yourself, you watch out how you're putting it on paper. It was the quality of the communication, not the length and how much paper and where they put it, because it could become an evidence against the project in the sense, nope, we are not owed any nickel, or substantiation, it was properly done based on the customer's instructions. So that's required a particular teamwork from a communications point of view amongst the team. Sometimes we were about 35 to 40 people on the phone at that given time. And the communication was really, the documentation was what I had the biggest concern with, that it was all documented properly, could be found at any time. And communication amongst ourselves, if it was significant, one of us would then say, okay, let me just summarize that we talked about this in case somebody would ask. And otherwise, the traditional boomer exit millennials. In my project, at one point in time, in one project, the oldest one was 73, the youngest one was in his upper 20s. We're about a huge team. And it didn't make any difference what communication is concerned, because I succeeded to get everybody on the same page. Come back to a little thing that you had before. In my math, 80% of my time as project manager was spent in communicating. The other 80%, like I used to tell them, was actually being overrun by an avalanche of email every day, which could be anything between 50 and 200. And God forbid I had overlooked one where I was marked for copy, where I marked you for copy.
Right, that's true, absolutely. Anyone else would like to share?
I like these characterizations, but I don't think they apply that well in the technology arena. Because it seems to me that the technologies that we have to use kind of homogenize across the generations. We're all having to use instant messaging. For the most part, you've got to be reachable on your cell phone at any time. So going back to what the previous slide was showing, that earlier one about, the Xers say, call me only at work. No, that's not going to work.
In some teams, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I like that comment. It's really interesting because I think it just depends on the industry and the type of business. I think if you're dealing in corporate type of America, absolutely you're used to everybody through technology and innovation just kind of coming up to speed. But you'll be surprised, I mean, the health industry and banking industry and service industry and almost anything that radiates outside of corporate into franchises or the lack of technical savviness at one extreme of the workforce versus at the core kind of leadership at corporate is just remarkable. And dealing with that, and often there is also this huge generational gap that feeds into that. Then I see this absolutely applied to that.
Okay, good, absolutely. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
On my project, I had a particular individual who was extremely technical, and it was very difficult to motivate him to do his part of the work last fall. And so just the basic Aretha Franklin respect thing kind of worked,
And now he comes in at 6:30 in the morning, I'm like, dude, are you serious? I'm not even turning over yet. So that's really worked out well for him, meeting the deadlines that I need him to do, and just communicating and respecting that, hey, I understand you are a techie person, I'll do the documentation, just write the code. And we kind of balance it like that.
All right, good. That's good. Anyone else? One of the things that studying, we've seen this in our organization too. One of the things that the studies have shown is that when companies have to bring in the youth in the company, right, to bring the technology. You need that. If you don't do it, you won't survive. But there's a myth that you have to have that the youth can do it on their own, basically. And what studies are showing is that you need the youth, but you still need the seasoned folks to create that structure. You just have to have that. And Jim, do you see anything in education industry that leans to that by any chance? Huh? Yeah. Yeah, we're all different. Okay, but that's what we're seeing. Right? We bring the younger generation into our company, to do some of the things, because you need some of the out of the box thinking to create new ideas, right? But then you need the structure behind it to make sure that they can have the success that they need, right? Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, I agree with what you said there about work with multitudes of people at Capital One. And it's really true. It's fun to work with the young people because they have so much energy, and they want to learn so fast. And that's kind of a difference, I think. Absolutely. The learning speed in it. And I don't know if that's because I'm getting older or not, but it's just the grasp of the concepts. And once they got it really well. Absolutely. So it's not fair because everybody says there's a lot of smart people there because they hire very smart people. But it's really different. And then we work with, I've got a mixture of people that I work with all the time, with hundreds of people. But we really got to pay attention to who's on the telephone and listen very carefully to the differences. And over here on the young side, I'm really finding out a thank you is huge. Absolutely. And especially, I've noticed this on the cultural differences. Example was that we were having a lot of trouble with our Oracle DBAs, and they were going from American support to India support, India's offshore support, and a thank you. I said thank you to one of them. I emailed them. I said, I really appreciate your efforts. I know we're giving you a tough time, but I just really appreciate your efforts. And all of a sudden, the click came on, and he's working for us like crazy. Right. Getting us other people to help him when he doesn't know, and just all sorts of things. So all I said was thank you.
Absolutely. I have a story to share about something like that.
One thing I wanted to say, it seems like you need to keep some of the older people around that know how the business works. The young people come in and they have all these great ideas, they can program everything, but they don't know some of the basics of how the business works. And that's real important also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Just that institutional knowledge is always there, and innovation always tries to, and now that you have industry best practices, you're really quick to come in and apply it, not necessarily knowing, on the one hand, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but then on the other hand, that end user acceptance is the people with the institutional knowledge and with the dedication and expertise behind it, because I think the younger folks, they have a huge ability to learn, but then they also, they want immediate kind of satisfaction, immediate ramification, and they're quick to move on to the next thing, kind of like I got it. So the attention to detail, and there's that expertise that comes from doing things over and over again, and years of experience that the younger generation just doesn't have and doesn't necessarily appreciate until there's a big problem. And it's one of those you don't know till because you don't know what you don't know unless you've done it so many times that experience has taught you something.
Absolutely. All right. Anyone else? I have a nephew that's extremely good with computers. He can make a computer do backflips if it's just sitting there by itself. He can do it, levitate over the table, does all those things, right? So his first job was basically doing help desk stuff, just helping out, fixing the computers. And then he was excited that he could log in to a computer remotely and help solve the people's problem. Well, he did a very good job at the company, and they hired him on to do networking now. Well, now he has to deal with servers that are not necessarily right next to him. He can't see the servers, and he's frustrated. And I said, why are you frustrated? He said, I should master this by now, right? But that just kind of gives you his answer. Oh, wait a minute. How long does it take in a normal progression for you to be able to learn this? He says, well, they said you should be able to do this in 2 to 3 years, but I need to do it in 6 months. What? Because he was so used to mastering computer, just a single little PC desktop, and now understanding the network, understanding how things work from a corporate structure, and understanding the business aspects of it, it was frustrating to him. And that's what we see today in young generations that come in. And it's important for us to, as our leaders, to have that institutional knowledge to be able to sit with them and then get them understanding where we are as a corporation and where we're trying to go and see if we can get the best out of them. And what I've found, just putting this together, these are the 3 things that are actually, I just basically identified as, what will help us as leaders just communicating across multiple generations. Just being aware that there can be miscommunication because of the generations that we're in, that we have. Just be aware of that. That's number 1. And then secondly, just recognize that we all use different languages. Just like my niece was just texting me back and forth. And that's her way of communicating with me. She don't pick up the phone, maybe because she doesn't want me to tell her something she doesn't want to hear, but she just doesn't pick up the phone. And then there's no magical number or magical age that says if you're at this age, you're in this particular generation. It isn't. And you proved that earlier, because all of us are forced to use technology. It's all a part of our lives. Some of us do it differently. Some of us do it faster. Some of us do it slower. I was on a project team with a bunch of young people, and the first thing they said is, hey, we need to create a blog. Right? Now, I've never written a blog before. I've never created a blog. I've never even participated in a blog before then. And my question was, why? He says, well, we'll be able to reach people who have these answers, and they can come back and respond to us. I didn't think about that. It's a great idea. Another person says, let's create a Facebook page. And the first question is, why? Well, we can reach out to more people, get answers, filter through those answers, and then apply it to our blog to solve the same problem. So it's just remembering that there is a difference, remembering that we just need to understand that we communicate differently, and then once we understand that, we just apply our leadership skills to our projects and to our various generations. So here's the objectives that we covered today. Hopefully we did, in fact, capture all those things. We identified a few things. Of course, I kind of tripped you up in the beginning. And, we kind of reviewed a few tips that you can use to motivate your team members or to get your team to be a little more successful. We did some interactive exercises, and hopefully those help, just kind of create some anxiety for you to just really remind you of what we have to do as leaders. And then we just kind of talked about some tools and some tips that we can use as leaders going forward. So hopefully with that, we were able to at least point out some things that we could use to become more effective as project leaders in your job going forward. So I'm going to pass around the evaluation sheets. If you don't mind, please just take one and fill these out for me. Let me know what you thought about the presentation. And now I'm open for questions, whatever questions that you may have.
How does the generational differences work across borders, between, say, the United States and China, Korea, and Europe? Do we have is it the same type of generational gaps, or are some cultures still stronger than the generation gap itself?
I think what you'll find, one of the things that I learned when I was in the military is each time we deployed to a country, we would always, we were taught on the culture of that country. And I think that's what we have to do, right? As a project, you just have to go and get familiar with that culture. And the one that come to mind is, let's say in Asia. In Asia, they value age more so than we do it here in the United States. All right? We don't value our seniors as much as what they do there. And so when a person of seniority speaks, that person is speaking with authority. And here in America, in some cases, we don't recognize that. All right? So that's the only thing I can share with you is that when we traveled and deployed to the first countries, one of the first things we had to learn was the culture of that country before we went there. So we didn't want to create any international incident by not recognizing, recognizing the cultures there.
Well, when you say culture, you're also looking at the laws and holidays. A lot of times you go to a different country and equipment's on its way and everybody's on vacation.
That's true too, but for us, from a military perspective, number one was for us was safety, right? Make sure that our troops was safe, but at the same time with that, not violating any type of cultural laws or cultural problems there. And if we did do it, it would be handled by our military government, by that sense. But still, we didn't want to do that at all. That was a push from us. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Oh, couple of questions. Actually, currently I'm working in a project, and it seems that currently I'm not the project manager, and the project member, and just observe and see that the project manager faces the pressure from the top management, also from the customer, from the team members. And it seems the whole project is just like it's moving like a lady camel. It's quite slow. And actually we do expect the project can finish on time or better finish as soon as possible. But the thing is, whatever project manager try to kick everyone in team just going with its natural step. So I just doubt if any the skills for the project management can make it faster. I just doubt about that.
So if I understand the question, project managers are under pressure from the customer as well as from the upper management. And so in turn, project manager turns around and puts the pressure on the project team itself, right? Unfortunately, in this room, nobody does that. It's one of the things that we have to, as a project manager, that's one of the things that you have to manage. It's going, those things are going to happen. I mean, every single one of us have been pressured by our customer and by our leadership team to either get the project done faster, under budget, earlier, especially when you get close to the end of quarters or the end of the year. So those things do happen. The question I'm hoping to answer for you is, what do you do? How do you manage that? And a lot of times you simply cannot get the project done any faster. It's like that balloon that you see in the carnival where they squeeze one end of it. It looks small over here, but guess what? It's still big over here, right? And we think sometimes that if you just throw a lot of people at the project, you can get the project done faster. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. Project managers, unfortunately, have to be a little more creative at times, and hopefully you can get the best out of your team members to be able to get the job done faster. Maybe some things that you can do in parallel instead of doing it from a linear perspective. And that's probably about the only thing I can think of. Okay? I'm hoping I answered the question for you. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I appreciate your time, and I hope you fill out the presentation. There it is right here. That's just a list of the references that I used to be able to put this presentation together for you. If you would like a copy of the presentation, I'll let I'll provide it to Jim, and he can get it out to the distribution if necessary. But we will have it available for future review later on. All right. So if there are no other further questions, I appreciate your time and thank you very much. Okay. All right.